Welcome to this discussion with simply a hero, Dr. Clarence B. Jones. Clarence, it's so good to be with you at the virtual SphinxConnect Unity Conference and to get to share your wisdom with everybody at Sphinx, which has been doing such extraordinary work, furthering diversity in classical music for over 2 decades, almost 25 years. And I'm so honored to be associated with this organization from before, but also now that I'm the president of Juilliard. And you and I met, of course, when I was actually still at the Aspen Institute and you were speaking about your history. And the one thing that didn't seem to come up then, which came up later, was that you actually went to Juilliard. And it was such an extraordinary moment to get to call you and become reacquainted and invite you back to the school where you joined us a year ago. And I got to present you with the President's Medal, and you spoke to our students, and you went to classes and concerts and just became just part of the fabric again of Juilliard after so many years. So today we're going to talk about the legacy of Dr. King. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about music and history. And it's just an honor to get to share in a conversation with you.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure, as you know, Damian.
Maybe we should start at the beginning, and maybe we could even just pick up right there about music in your life and how it's influenced you and how you think about it in terms of the work you've done and continue to do.
Wow. I tend to be sometimes a philosophical academic person, but let me paint the broader canvas, a broader canvas, if I might. There was a professor of historical theology at Oxford University who wrote a book in the beginning. And in that book, he noted that in 1620, Francis Bacon, the influential English philosopher, observed that there were 3 inventions that had shaped the world as he knew it in 1620. Printing, gunpowder, and the magnet. Now, the magnet, when used to construct a mariner's compass, allowed navigation to proceed even when the sun and stars could not be seen. But none of the actual potential solutions which confront us today would be possible without, obviously, these seminal discoveries. But I have to remind everyone that Harriet Tubman, who was a slave, freeing slavery, she didn't have a compass when she made her trips north with slaves from slave states. She had only to look up at the sky for the configuration of the drinking gourd. So in direct answer to your question, music is something very special. To me, it occurred early when I was in the Catholic boarding school and was singing and learning to sing in English and Latin, a lot of liturgy and listening to organs and organ music and so forth. And as I grew older, I had a profound respect for music, even before I went to Juilliard. Thomas Carlyle wrote in 1852, Music is well said to be the speech of angels. In fact, nothing among the utterances allowed to man is felt to be so divine. It brings us nearer to the infinite. Well, that describes a little bit of my journey. A distinguished judge spoke about music this way: take a musical bath once or twice a week for a few seasons, and you'll find that it's also good for the soul and what a water bath is to the body. 1964, Igor Stravinsky wrote that the trouble with music appreciation is general, in general, is that people are taught to have too much respect for music. They should learn to love music. Well, you know what? In reference to our call today and my experiences, Juilliard to me became, and I learned afterwards, to be a cultural guardian of the musical soul of our nation. Music has became my North Star, as it became for Harriet Tubman. The North Star became her way to the north.
Clarence,
And
talk
so,
to us more about music and that cultural soul, and how that manifests itself for you, and how it affected. One of the things I was most interested, I remember last January when you spoke at the school, you talked about how it influenced your speech writing, and how it was permeated many aspects of the work you actually did in a tangible sense.
yes, well, in Juilliard, I learned, if you were an instrumentalist, as I was, in the clarinetist, and then there were people on the piano and violin and cello and other things. But they supplemented things such as ear training. They supplemented you to understand or have a better appreciation of the notes you were playing, the notes you were hearing. And that this had a direct impact on me, because I learned not only as having been trained as a classical clarinetist, but I also learned in ear training, where you are able, for a period of time, to retain the authentic sound of the notes you heard. A is 440 vibrations per second. C is 426 vibrations. For a period of time, you can retain those things, And I think what you may be referring to is that when I was working with Dr. King, because I had developed this ability principally, I make it very clear, as a result of going to Juilliard, not just as a clarinetist, but equally more so as the training I had in ear training, is that you listen to another party, or in Juilliard, it was a piano. They play on the piano, they hit a note and they ask you what the note is. But with Dr. King, I could hear his voice when I was away from him. And I could retain the sound of that hearing in his voice, which enabled me to write for him in a tonality that was most comfortable for him. In fact, so much so, he used to say, Clarence, you're scary. I said, what do you mean? He says, in this speech you wrote, you have pause and repeat. I was getting into the cadence.
Let's go now deeper into how music itself can be the cultural soul in your mind. How does music carry us, and how does it relate to all the young artists who are going to see this, all the artists who are going to see this talk, when you think of, the role of music and how it is more complex, but also the way you describe it, actually more simple. It's both for a society. And how would you encourage people to think about music?
I would say this. They will be external forces. Let us call political forces in our culture that will try to denigrate or define people other than the soulness, the originality of who they are. A tendency historically, we want to soul them, we want to define them to be something less than who they are. I'm just talking about history. Some external force can be telling them that they are nobody. But they may hear some music attached to a rhythm or words, but the music will be so compelling that it just wraps their soul. So I am saddened today. I mean, I'm saddened is maybe an overstatement. I am disheartened that in our apparent preoccupation with technology, the transmission of this by this kind of technology or this technology, that which is all around us, sound, is so extraordinary that that's what we should be spending more time on. All of those things, as I said, is the cultural North Star. I look back and I reflected that we were all held ourselves together with the music of the gospel that came out of the religious teaching of the church. And it was the collective singing and individual solos that inspired us to have courage.
I was reading up suggestion of our chair of the jazz department in Juilliard, Aaron Flagg. Reading up about a meeting you had with Attorney General Robert Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
Please tell us the story, and I'll tell you where I want to hear it from you.
Okay.
Read, but I also want to think about what I read was I heard rhythm. I heard you moderating how success could happen through a musician in a conversation.
First of all, you had James Baldwin, preeminent Black author. Lorraine Hansberry, preeminent Black playwright. Harry Belafonte, Lena Horne, preeminent Black performing artist. Dr. Kenneth Clark, esteemed psychologist who provided the psychological backbone for the Brown versus Board of Education decision. And you had a SNCC worker, Jerome Smith, who had his head bandaged. He's just coming back from someplace in New Orleans, Louisiana. And you had Rip Torn, and you had me, and the Attorney General, of course. And there occurred a rather frank kind of open wound discussion about race in America, you know. And so that was an extraordinary experience because it opened my eyes, and it certainly confirmed in Jimmy Baldwin's eyes. Confirmed in Jimmy Baldwin's eyes the great gap between what white America sees and what Black America experiences and sees. And that's because then became one of the reasons why his book, The Fire Next Time, became such a powerful book, because it talked about the fact that, you know, we're all in this together. But if white people don't come to see it, there will be no fire next time. You know, it's really a heavy obligation on the part of white people to see the actual, not the imagined, but the actual living, factual conditions of Negroes in America in relationship to the Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, and our precepts. So that was a powerful meeting. Yes, it was.
Clarence, you are, you know, in so many ways, you bear, I suppose, the weight of being living history, and of being able to share in such a way the emotions and the reality of true history. And we're so grateful for that opportunity to hear you speak and to get to exist with you. And maybe you could leave us with just some parting bits of advice for all the musicians at Sphinx who are working for progress in that same spirit that you described about opening people's eyes and ears to hear.
Well, you have to, I'm not talking about romantic love. You have to love the people you serve. And your ability to love the people you seek to serve, either by the performance of your music or other form of artistry, that is a derivative of how much you love yourself. Because if you love yourself and you get up every day and know that I am somebody, that means you can take this somebodyness of you that's so special and share it with somebody else. Give them a sense of hope. Make them hear the purity and sound of a note that they never heard before. Make them hear a harmony that they never heard before. Make them see a dance movement that they never even thought possible before.
You're talking about real communication through art.
That's what I'm talking about. Communication through art.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Communication. Okay.
I'm so grateful to you for this conversation.
No, it's my honor. Okay. Thank you so much.